What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. We've reached the latest in the Rodgers saga, and I touched base a little bit on it yesterday with Ian Rappaport's report, but then we've got, of course, Mike Florio coming in. We've got some Schefter stuff. It's all over the place. Of course, the Pro Football Talk stuff was that Titans, Steelers, Broncos could all be in the chase for Aaron Rodgers. Then, Rob Demovsky and Matt Schneidman are reporting that the Packers are still in the same spot, that they have not been talking trades. Who the heck knows? So let me start by saying, I've said all along, I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is going to ebb and flow in every direction until we get a final answer from Rodgers. There will be days where it seems like we're certain that he's coming back and playing for the Packers. There will be days where it seems like he may retire, and there will be days where it seems like he may be traded. There are going to be stories and reports and rumors and everything until we get that final answer. And I do still believe that that final answer is coming sooner rather than later. Now, I did see posted on Twitter, I think it was Brett Collerman who posted, when Rodgers initially stated that he wasn't going to drag this out, it was in December. And we are now in March. And to some extent, the key date was always before the franchise tag was due and before the start of free agency and things like that. But we're reaching a point where this is still dragged out. And it still is certainly a point of conversation and everything as we start leading into the new league year and all of those sort of things. So a lot to potentially be decided still. And I frankly, I don't know where I come in on what I believe here. It does seem like Green Bay has sort of gone out of their way to show Rodgers and show everyone just how all in they are on bringing back Aaron Rodgers. It does seem semi-interesting that Rodgers has not come to a conclusion as of yet. I still, the biggest shock to me still would be if he retired. I just can't believe that after coming off of back-to-back MVP seasons, not coming off his best game against the 49ers, having to retire in the same season as Tom Brady, I just struggle to see that being the ultimate decision where he just says, well, I'm out. That said, it's Aaron Rodgers, and trying to predict his next move is next to near impossible. It also still strikes me as odd that after going really on this tour of talking so positively about Green Bay, and more on that in just a moment, but the front office and the coaches and everyone, that he would then demand a trade to another team. That still seems odd to me. But it also seems odd to me that here we are on March 6th, and no decision has ultimately been made yet. It would seem that if it kind of came down to this decision, by all reports, Green Bay is willing to make him the highest paid quarterback. He has the opportunity to still win a Super Bowl in Green Bay. He's talked about legacy, longevity, all of it. It would seem that you could come to an easy conclusion that it's time to go back to Green Bay. I'm going to go play with my teammates and we're going to run this back for another season. I don't see anything, and I mean anything, that I could even remotely glean that Green Bay has done incorrectly or wrong throughout this process that Rodgers could be upset about or anything. So all of this still strikes me as a bit odd. As I sit here today, I still believe that the most likely scenario is that he comes back and plays for the Packers this year. But again, it's really tough to sort of read the tea leaves at this point as to what could be happening. Now, as far as was there trade offers, are there no trade offers? Of course, there's the Ian Rappaports, the Florios, who are saying that teams are ready and waiting with their offers. There's the reports from Demovsky and Schneidman, etc., that the Packers have not entertained trade offers. I think the truth is clearly somewhere in the middle, right? The teams that are interested in Aaron Rodgers clearly have packages lined up waiting for Aaron Rodgers to say we would like to be, that he wants to be traded, right? I guarantee you the first quarterback, sort of leaf that needs to fall off the tree is what happens with Aaron Rodgers. And teams will go all in to try to get him. Whether it's bad teams, good teams, great teams, there will be plenty of suitors. And I guarantee you that those teams are putting together massive packages to acquire his service if, in fact, Rodgers decides that he wants to play for another team. Moreover, if there is an inkling from Rodgers in his camp that maybe, just maybe, he wants to play for another team, I can guarantee you, tampering or not, that there are back channels that those teams have gone through to make Rodgers aware of exactly what their plans would be, what roster they would surround him with, who they would go out and potentially get, what they would be willing to give up in a trade, and so on and so forth. So I guarantee you those other teams are having those conversations. And do I think Green Bay and Brian Gutekunst are picking up the phone and saying, hey, highest bidder, come get him? No, I don't think so right now. And I think if teams would come calling, I think they'd probably say, we think Aaron Rodgers is going to remain a Packer. Because the truth of the matter is there's no reason for Green Bay to engage in those conversations right now, right? As soon as Rodgers says, I want to trade, every team will come to them. They don't have to go to any other team. And there's also a chance that Rodgers says, listen, I'm either playing for Denver this year or I'm retiring. So you don't have to talk to Pittsburgh. You don't have to talk to Washington. You don't have to talk to San Francisco. You don't have to talk to Philly. You don't have to talk to any of those other teams. You're either going to trade me to Denver or I'm going to retire. At which point Green Bay then only has to work with Denver and they have to come to some conclusion. And then there is some leverage on both sides because Green Bay can just say, you can retire then. If you don't want to give us 3 first-round picks and Jerry Jeudy, then he can just retire and we're cool with that. So those things will come to a head eventually if this ends up being the case. But there's leverage on both sides, and Green Bay doesn't have to do a ton of that now. And in fact, if they started engaging in trades, they probably know that could potentially offend Rodgers and his camp. And Rodgers might say, fine, you're having those conversations already, then I'm in. Let's figure out one that works. So it just makes more sense for Green Bay to not pick up the phone, not have those conversations, and to be able to continue to say, we're not trading Aaron Rodgers, we have no interest, we're not entertaining trade talks. They can say all of that, but I also believe that some of those reports of other teams putting their offers together is, I'm sure, unequivocally true. I can't imagine if you're Denver or Pittsburgh or any other team that's in need of a quarterback that you're not ready to put together a package and have those internal conversations as to what they would give up for Aaron Rodgers and probably find a way to talk to his agent and just say, hey, nudge, nudge, hint, hint, we are interested on the side if this should come to fruition. You have to do that, right? This is the NF freaking L. This is a massive business. You are trying to win championships, and the MVP, the back-to-back MVP of the league, may be on the market. You can't just sit idly by and say, well, we'll figure all that out if he decides to get traded. No, you better have your ducks in a row, your I's dotted, your T's crossed, whatever cliche that you want to say, to make sure that you are in those conversations should Rodgers in fact become available. So again, I think the truth is in the middle here. I think Rodgers may very well be torn. He has to be torn in some capacity, right? Whether that's retire, trade, whatever. I just don't. I think he makes his decision known to the team and to everyone if he knows unequivocally that he's coming back to Green Bay. Now, maybe he's 98% sure he's coming back to Green Bay and just wants a little bit more time. Who knows? But I don't believe that it's final yet. I think it's very clear that it's not final yet. And I do believe that other teams, I'm sure, putting together packages and maybe talking to his agent on the side, illegal or legal, whatever, whatever, they're, I'm sure, doing it. And I'm sure Green Bay's kicking their feet up and saying, we're confident Rodgers is going to come back and we'll get to trades if we have to get there, but we're hoping that it's not going to get to that. That's where I think things stand right now. Now, what I'm confused by is a little bit of Aaron Rodgers. I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but what is it, if it's not Green Bay, that's making him want to go elsewhere? What is it that he wants? It certainly can't be contract, right? Because by all accounts, the Packers are willing to go all in and offer him to, the biggest contract, highest paid player in all of football. And I'm sure a long-term deal, if that's what Rodgers decides that he wants. I don't think there's a contract that they probably wouldn't do in some capacity if Rodgers wanted it. I'll put it this way, whatever contract he could get from Denver, from Pittsburgh, from Tennessee, from whomever, I guarantee you Green Bay's willing to do it. So to me, it's not a money thing, which Rodgers and Pat McAfee have said that it's not a money thing. And I think the biggest reason why is they know they can get whatever dollar figure they need from Green Bay. Is it Super Bowl contention? Because I really struggle to believe, you could certainly make an argument that, Denver or maybe some of these teams could put together as competitive or maybe even a slightly better roster if in perfect conditions than Green Bay has. But you're going to a new team, new players. You have to learn a lot more things. And I know Tom Brady just did that 2 years ago and made it work. But you're also probably going to the AFC where you're competing with Mahomes and Herbert and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and some really talented quarterbacks and some really talented teams. The NFC, it's like the Rams and the Packers, and that's it right now. So you probably have a better chance at Super Bowl contention with Green Bay, at least getting there. And then, it's a coin flip either way. So I like, is that a benefit somewhere else? It doesn't seem like it. Does he want like this all-in, guarantee from the team he's going to? Green Bay is going to do that. And yes, there are salary cap restraints, but they can put together as good of a team as anyone else can arguably put together. Is it legacy? Like, if he wants his legacy, he's talked multiple times about legacy and how important that is, wanting to retire a Green Bay Packer. That seems to be within his grasp, that he could do that. That Green Bay is willing to make him that offer, have him finish his career in Green Bay, and now it's in Rodgers' court. So it can't be that. He's talked multiple times about the people. It's the people that matter. Well, I guarantee you Green Bay is willing to probably bring back Devontae and the majority of this team, David Bakhtiari, probably get Randall Cobb back on a cheaper deal, probably get Mercedes Lewis back on a cheaper deal, probably keep Billy Turner just for him, maybe keep Mason Crosby, have Matt LaFleur, who he's raved on about as his head coach. I don't see if it's about the people, if it's the people that matter, the people that he's built those relationships with are going to be in Green Bay. Is it the coaches in the front office? Again, he's waxed poetic about how great the coaching staff has been, how the front office has met him, and that there's been serious growth on both of those sides. I very much struggle to say, like, all right, if he's going to whatever team, and oh, by the way, his teammates and his coaching staff and this organization has had his back throughout all of this offseason. Like, go back and look at some of the tweets, like defending Aaron Rodgers through a variety of different things this past year. Like, his teammates have had his back. It still would be jarring to me if all of a sudden he's like, I'm demanding a trade to another team. It just doesn't add up to me. And it could happen. It very well could happen. But I would just love to know, if it does happen, what was the ultimate reason? And there's only two things. And A, I mentioned the one yesterday, change of scenery. Or B, and I don't even like talking about this. It like makes me uncomfortable because I just don't like getting into players' personal lives. But maybe there is a Shailene Woodley element to this. And that's purely hypothetical. And like I said, I don't even like talking about that or bringing that up. But maybe they do either want to get back together or are back together or never broke up. I don't know, because I don't follow any of that stuff, nor do I care. But maybe she wants to be on the West Coast and maybe he wants to be closer to her. Maybe that's the case. I literally don't know. And like I said, I don't even want to touch with a 10-foot pole. But maybe there's some aspect of that could be true as well. And if that's the case, then what are you supposed to do if you're Green Bay? You can't relocate. You're not going to play in Denver for a year. You're not going to play in the West Coast for a year. You're in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which, oh, by the way, Aaron Rodgers mentioned is not a vacation destination. So I don't know. It just seems to me that there are so many more advantages and positives to staying in Green Bay for Rodgers than there are negatives. But sometimes the grass is greener, or sometimes there's just extenuating circumstances that have nothing to do with your current situation. And maybe if there's a half, like a half-life of what Green Bay could be this season, with also moving close, like a compromise, I guess is a better word for it, maybe going to Denver where he's closer to Shailene and goes to a West Coast, grass is greener on the other side, gets a change of scenery, while also having a team that can compete with a head coach that he's very familiar with and likes in Nathaniel Hackett. I'm sure there's some part of that that's alluring to him. Tough to say. But I will love to hear the reasoning if that's ultimately why what his reason is if he ultimately decides to move to another team and demand a trade. So that all being said, what are some potential trade packages that would make sense if you're the Packers if he does decide to go to another team? And again, I think if this ends up happening, it's probably Denver. And I think if this ends up happening, even if it's not Denver, he probably gives Green Bay one destination. I don't think he's going to say, hey, you can trade me to Pittsburgh, Denver, San Francisco. Those are my three choices. Figure it out. I think he probably says, I'm going to Denver or I'm retiring. Trade me to Denver. And I think they probably get something worked out. But let's just go through some of these because I think there's 5 that could make sense. The first, and I don't think, I'll start by saying, I'm going to say the two most unlikely ones first, because I don't think Green Bay would trade him to the NFC. I just don't. I don't think that would happen. However, the first one I want to go over, because in this scenario, I think they probably should. And that's the 49ers. The 49ers are ready to compete. They are a Super Bowl team without a Super Bowl quarterback. And I know they just beat Green Bay without, with Jimmy Garoppolo and not Aaron Rodgers, but that just makes me believe even more if they had Aaron Rodgers that they would be all in. They'd be playing in much better weather than in Green Bay. Probably would be easy favorites to win the NFC. And if you're Green Bay, I think you could make a very strong argument that Trey Lance is the player that would have to intrigue you more than any other team's trade package could put together. Because there's not a quarterback in this year's draft you're going gaga over. And you don't know what future years are going to bring. You don't know what draft picks you're going to get in future seasons. You're certainly still unsure about Jordan Love. Trey Lance is intriguing for a lot of different reasons. Top 5 quarterback. San Francisco looks ready to move all in. And listen, there's a chance that Green Bay could say, we want Trey Lance, and San Francisco just says, no, we're going to go with Trey Lance moving forward. But if San Francisco is willing to part with Trey Lance for Aaron Rodgers, a future potential star quarterback for 1 to 2 years of Aaron Rodgers, if that's the offer that's on the table, I think you have to really consider that for all parties, right? San Francisco knows that they'd be the favorites for the next couple seasons. They get Aaron Rodgers with a heck of a football team. For the Aaron Rodgers, you get to go play on the West Coast in San Francisco, in Cali, with a really good football team. And if you're Green Bay, again, I think Trey Lance arguably could be the biggest trade chip that you could get back. Now you might say, well, what about Jordan Love? Let him compete. Screw it. I'll take 2 lottery tickets, and I think Lance is probably a better prospect player right now even than Jordan Love would be. But screw it. Let him compete. Let the best man win. Now, maybe Green Bay wants a little bit more, or maybe San Francisco wants something back in a trade. Maybe they want Jordan Love. Maybe it's like Rodgers and Love for Lance and like a second-round pick or something, so that they have a long-term play as well. I don't know. But if you can get Trey Lance, to me, that's super intriguing. So, again, I don't think they trade him to the NFC, but that would be one. And again, what goes on top of that from a Rodgers-Lance standpoint? Maybe there's some things Green Bay adds in. Maybe there's some things San Francisco adds in. But if that's the crux of the deal, that to me is very intriguing and would be a deal that I would have to take a look at if I were Green Bay. And again, I think that would actually make sense for all parties, especially if San Francisco is willing to part with Lance for a couple of years of Rodgers, which again might be a tough sell for them. The next is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, don't think they're trading him to Green Bay. And if I'm Green Bay, if I'm even considering trading you to Tampa, you are going to pay a premium. You're giving 3 first-round picks. You're giving me Antoine Winfield. You're giving me Joe Tryon. You're giving me Kyle Trask. That's probably the starting point. 3 first-round picks. I get a second-round quarterback from a season ago. I'm not super high on. I don't like Trask. I don't think he's going to end up anything, but there's no reason in not taking the a lottery ticket and seeing if he might be able to do something in Matt LaFleur's offense. You get an edge rusher who looks really talented that would fit really well across from Rashawn Gary long-term, and you get a really good safety in Antoine Winfield. That's the starting point. I want a major trade package if I'm trading you to an NFC team like Tampa Bay and not getting a legit top-tier quarterback in return. That would be what I would start the talking at with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tennessee, the team that was mentioned by Mike Florio, again, take it for what it's worth. This is really complicated because that Tannehill contract is really complex in the fact of if you want to get off of it, you have to wait till June 1st basically and probably trade him after June 1st, which means that either Green Bay needs to wait. This might need to end up being like a 3-team deal. I just don't think this is super likely, and I think it makes more sense for the Titans just to stick with Tannehill. But I'm asking also for 3 first-round picks. Elijah Molden, the corner from last season. Nick Westbrook-Akina, who is a nice young wide receiver who showed some flashes a season ago. And then Dylan Redunz, who was a second-round pick a season ago as well. So 3 first-round picks, Elijah Molden, Nick Westbrook-Akina, and Dylan Redunz is probably, again, where I'm starting the conversation with the Titans. That pick this year isn't until pick 26, so it's not a great pick. It's not a premium pick. I'm not getting a quarterback. I don't love that, overall package, but that's probably where I'm starting the conversation. Packers Steelers, again, pick 20 doesn't do a ton for me. I'm once again starting with 3 first-round picks. Kendrick Green, offensive lineman, Trey Norwood, a 7th-round corner from a season ago who put some nice tape out there, and then Isaiah Loudermilk. That, again, is probably just the starting point. Remember, a lot of these teams aren't going to want to give up top-tier talent because if they're getting Rodgers, they want to compete right now. So it's got to be some mix of draft picks, younger players. Again, I think Green, Norwood, Loudermilk, these are all rotational players. Green would probably be a potential long-term starter on the interior of the offensive line, but Norwood, Loudermilk, rotational guys, but you're getting 3 first-round picks, including pick 20. That could work, but I don't love that deal either. And of course, the most likely one, the Broncos one that we talked about forever. Again, 3 first-round picks, including the 9th overall pick. Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy, maybe Big O at tight end. That, again, is where I'm ultimately starting the conversation. Those are the trade packages that I'd be looking at. You could talk about Washington and their top pick. You could talk about Philly and their 3 first-round picks plus Jalen Hurts. Like, there's some other ones you could put together, but I'm just not sure Rodgers is going to want to go to a couple of those situations. So that's what I'm looking for. The Trey Lance one is very interesting. The Broncos one is obviously interesting for a variety of reasons, but again, this probably comes down to Aaron Rodgers and where he wants to play. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here with an all-new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.